We got a major breaking story. Apparently in the Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, there was a shooting. Now, we don't have the full details just yet. Police are investigating, but it sounds like more than one person got shot. A lot of people are probably going to say, well, what do you expect would happen when you have armed individuals roaming around? We don't know why they were shot. Maybe it was one of these self-appointed police. Maybe it was just criminal elements who know there's no police available. But yes, we have the story breaking now. I'll have more details on it later. So maybe if you're hearing this on the podcast, it's already, I've already reported on the updates. But we also have news coming out of Atlanta of two other shootings. One where a protest group was approaching the Wendy's where that got burned down, where Rayshard was killed. A gunfight breaks out. We don't exactly know why. And a woman got shot through the leg. There is video of this. It is nuts. I got to admit, this young protester, she took it like a boss. These people have no idea what they're doing when the gunshots go off. They're very ignorant. But she wasn't freaking out for the most part. That's rather impressive, I got to say. But there's also another incident where apparently a car was trying to drive through the street. The protesters were there. And then one of the protesters actually fired on the car. They have been arrested. I believe the protesters have been arrested. But this in Atlanta is following now the third day of a blue flu. According to CNN, one precinct only had like 3 cops show up for their shift yesterday. And now we're going into day 3, which was just the other day, where the police are not showing up. So there's a lot of reports going around about an increase in crime. It's hard to track these things for sure, because you really have to look at the long-term stats to determine whether or not these protests are because of the police calling out, or whether it's just because we had nationwide riots. I mean, look, when the riots were erupting across this country and people were getting shot, the cops were on duty. So it's hard to know for sure if this increase in crime is due to just the protest, the sentiment, or if we're really going to see a very serious impact due to the police not showing up. Now, I can't say. Seattle's Capitol Hill zone. I lived in Seattle maybe, 13 years ago. So I can't pretend like I know about what the crime stats are in Capitol Hill. But I can tell you, when I lived in Seattle, if someone told me that a shooting took place on Capitol Hill, I would have been like, whoa, that's crazy. It's like the hipster neighborhood, It's where all the hippy dippy people live, and they have their farmers markets and whatever, and their microbrew beers and stuff. I haven't been there in 13 years. So maybe things have changed. Maybe Seattle has become, a cesspool of violence and gun crime. Somehow I really doubt that. Yet we are seeing this. Let's read the story, and then we'll jump over to see what's going on with Seattle and this shooting. The Daily Beast reports Seattle police investigate shooting inside Chaz. The Seattle Police Department confirmed that officers were investigating a shooting inside the self-declared autonomous zone known as Chaz in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle. Now, they are saying it's the Capitol Hill organized protest, I guess, because they didn't want to say they were autonomous lest they get booted out or something. I don't know. Multiple reports on social media suggest that more than one person had been shot in the police-free zone. The area has been occupied since June 8th, when police retreated from the precinct, and George Floyd protesters secured an area of around 6 blocks, which has since been reduced by authorities. Now, I will point out something really, really weird. For the longest time, the leftist factions that were doing things like this were colloquially referred to as Antifa, because many of them flew the flag. Now they're not so much flying the flag, though there are some affiliated groups like the John Brown Gun Club. It's strange to me that Marxists, communists, far leftists are just calling themselves Black Lives Matter. It seems like a shield. I think it's fairly obvious. We've actually heard from high profile Black Lives Matter activists saying that these people are hijacking the movement, and it makes sense. When you have Trump calling out Antifa and saying they're bad, well, they stop flying the flag. They start flying, the banner of Black Lives Matter, and then they can do their weird occupations of police departments and shutting down cities, and then I guess eventually shooting each other. And they can claim it's not far left violence. It's just social justice. Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But let's jump over now. I think we have, so we have the Seattle Police Department saying they're investigating a shooting at 10th Avenue and East Pine. We'll update with additional information, so we'll see what happens. But we have this story out of Atlanta as well. Woman shot during protest at Wendy's, where Rayshard Brooks was killed. Police confirmed that a woman was shot in the leg at the location, though many other details may not emerge until Saturday. So this was just the other night. A spokesperson for the Atlanta Police Department said the victim was shot in the leg and is alert, conscious, and breathing. though further details are still limited at this time. The shooting happened in the same area where Rayshard Brooks was shot and killed by an Atlanta police officer. Brooks allegedly pointed a taser. We know all this. An alleged witness video shared on Twitter appears to show the scene. In it, several shots are heard and people are seen running. A short time later, someone yells that a woman has been shot and hit by gunfire. The video shows a woman receiving treatment a short time later. A man can be heard off camera saying a bullet narrowly missed him and hit the victim instead. The person who recorded the video said a protest was ongoing at the time of the gunfire and suggests the victim was a protester. Police are not yet able to corroborate these details and believe they'll have further information on Saturday. First and foremost, I can't play the video for you because YouTube would definitely take it down. I can't show you this post from Reddit. We can see these people. This is the area of the protest. And, that's just a glimpse of the video that's been going viral. But I will say, first I watched the video and a gunfight breaks out and it is intense. I mean, it's dozen plus gunshots. I don't know who or why. I don't think we have the details yet on why they're shooting at each other. But this young woman who's very clearly a protester, she probably looks like she's in her early 20s, all of a sudden lets out a shriek. And then the guy filming is like, oh man, you got hit. She falls down. You can see that she was hit in the leg. And listen, I'm sorry, but as stupid as these people are, and they need to be called out for being stupid, this young woman, though very ignorant, took it like a champ. Okay, and I do want to. She's not screaming at the top of her lungs. She's on the ground. She's telling people what happened. She's clear. She's conscious. That's impressive, man. I've seen people do way worse without even getting shot, to be honest. But I'll tell you what. Watching this video, and it's on Reddit. It's all over Twitter. These people, they're just insane. They don't seem to understand what the world is really like. They think they can walk through these areas, especially with no cops around, and everything's okay. And then when the gunshots ring out, what do? They stand upright in the middle of the street and they don't move. Mind-boggling. So listen, while I can give this young woman respect because she wasn't like shrieking and she took it very well and she's getting treatment and I hope she's okay. Listen, man, when the gunshots go off, you don't just stand there. You take cover. Find an angle, find cover, hit the deck, find dead ground. Don't just stand there while multiple gunshots are going off, or you could end up like her getting hit in the leg. I can believe it. These young, naive people have no idea what the city is really like. Okay, there's a few viral videos going around that I do not want to show. Okay, I do not want to cover these videos. But they depict people screaming things like Black Lives Matter and beating the ever-living crap out of random strangers and innocent people. And there's like 10 or more of these, and they're going viral like crazy. And I wonder what's going on, why these videos are going viral. But I tell you what, I grew up in Chicago, okay? You want to talk about this? You want to talk about why I bring it up? Because Chicago is not a nice suburb like a lot of these dumb hipster kids grow up in, thinking the world is all candy canes and rainbows. I'm sorry, man. Chicago is rough. And there's a lot of gun violence, a whole lot of it. When I was growing up, there was a fight, like, I don't know, a mile, not even a mile, a few blocks from the local high school. And then when one guy started losing, he reached onto a car where he planted a gun and he pulled it out. And then people ran away screaming at the top of their lungs. That's Chicago, man. So I talk to a lot of these people. I know people in Chicago who want to talk all big about racism and bigotry and what the city should be doing and how they should treat these protests. And they would not set foot in my neighborhood. Oh, and I've asked them even recently, hey, how about we I'll fly back down to Chicago. You can walk through my neighborhood with me. Let's out. No way, dude. I'm not doing that. Yeah. You got people who will lie and say that all these bad things are happening and the police are evil and all this stuff, but they know that crime really is bad. And so when you have something like a lot of arrests, say in my neighborhood, they say it's because the police are targeting us. And my neighborhood was very, very mixed. I'm not saying it was one race. It was very mixed. And they'll say it's because the cops are bad and they're crooked. And I'll be like, okay, go for a walk. Go for a walk. And then go to make sure there's no cops around. And they won't do it. On the other side, you get people like this young woman. They're going to march through an area where you've got no cops. The Atlanta cops are calling in sick. And then a shooting breaks out and they literally just stand there. And I'll tell you what, man, we got another story here. Protester detained after shooting at driver during argument in Midtown. It goes the other way. Things are getting crazy out there, man. Now listen, with a lot of these videos, especially with the protester who got shot in Atlanta, I want to make sure I make one thing clear. I don't know if this shooting has anything to do with protests with police. It's Atlanta. Okay, I don't know what their gun crime is like, but I'd imagine that in big cities, in certain areas, you have this. Like, if there was a protest in Chicago and someone got shot, I'd roll my eyes and be like, dude, it's Chicago. I don't think it has anything to do with the cops. So there's the bigger question. As we're now learning that we're going on to, I think, day 3 of the blue flu, I don't necessarily believe that these shootings, the Capitol Hill one clearly has something to do with no cops being around because it happened right by a police station. But with Atlanta, I have to wonder because it's Atlanta, so maybe sometimes shootings happen. I do think it's fair to say that it would be much less likely if the police were actively showing up and were on duty and were not, essentially protesting. There's rumors circulating now. I covered this the other day that on the 4th of July, the NYPD will stage a blue flu. We'll see. But 3 days now of large numbers of cops calling out in Atlanta. So let me do this. I want to make sure I give you the full story on the protester being detained because it's extremely important. But then we'll talk about the blue flu. AJC reports a suspect was detained Friday evening after a confrontation between a driver and protesters in Atlanta, authorities confirmed. Just before 8 p.m., officers responded to a gunshot call at the intersection of Ponce de Leon Avenue and Boulevard in Midtown. Atlanta police said a man had been shot inside his vehicle, but he was not injured. He was shot at inside his vehicle. Sorry. So we can clearly see police are still working. Personally, I have to question why. Could you imagine what would happen to this cop if he rolls up because somebody got shot at and there's a protester and they have to defend themselves and then they get put on death row? I know that Officer Rolfe isn't on death row yet, but the DA's lying. Like, it's crazy. Apparently, so the DA's claiming that this officer kicked Brooks when he was down, but witnesses say it didn't happen. And body camera footage that we've seen so far shows him desperately trying to save his life. But the DA lies. People eat it up. You'd have to be insane. I'm sorry, man. You know what? I don't know. Maybe people are scared. Maybe they need the money that bad. You know what? I would rather be homeless, but at least I'd be free. And you want to go, you want to stay on the job when they're telling you, we're going to tell you to do something and then we're going to put you away for it. That to me is insane. So you know what, man? You call it hubris, you call it naivety, whatever you want to call it. If it were me, you do whatever you want. You do whatever you want. If it were me, I'd quit on the spot. I would quit on the spot. Bye-bye. I'm out. Done. And other cops have already done this. We're seeing resignations across the country. But there was one viral video where a cop gets all choked up and he says, I'm not going to do this. I put in my notice. I'm out. Maybe it's the right thing to do. Everybody wants it. The conservatives are telling the cops stand up for themselves, saying, call in a blue flu, let people see how they really need you. And the left is saying defund the police. If it were me, I'd be gone. They say his vehicle was damaged by gunfire. Police did not say how many gunshots were fired during the incident. In cell phone video that appears to come from the scene, at least half a dozen gunshots can be heard. Man, I'm not going to be going down to Atlanta, I'll tell you that. Investigators said the incident stemmed from a confrontation between the driver and protesters in the area. The driver attempted to leave the area when the shooting occurred. The suspect, who was participating in the protest, was detained without further incident, police said. Neither the suspect's name or charges have been released. Detain is not arrested. So it seems like they detained somebody, but didn't actually find who did this. Witnesses told Channel 2 Action News the driver was upset about a protester blocking the road, so he grabbed his AR-15 out of his car. An armed protester then allegedly shot at the man. This is wow, dude. Wow. A protester got shot. A shooting at the Chaz. A man pulls out an AR-15 so someone shoots at him. Do you know what's going to... We're going to see gun battles in the streets. I mean, this is it. These people are lucky. This man with the AR-15 didn't return fire. They're lucky. He could have been justified. He could have said the crowd was shooting at me. Fortunately, this man wasn't hurt. But you know what? If the cops aren't going to do their job, this is what the left wants. The police have been sitting back and watching as statues of our founding fathers are being destroyed. So I'll tell you what, man. I only see dark days ahead. No matter what happens, election or otherwise. Insane desperation on all sides, zealotry, psychotic behavior, fake news, and an inability to learn from history. We are now watching as businesses remain closed. So what do we got going on the East Coast? Well, they've opened up outdoor seating, but most businesses, at least by me, still closed. can barely go out for a bite to eat unless with a lot of these places you need a reservation and hopefully you can find outdoor seating. So it's coming back, to be fair. But a lot of people are still out of work. We still have around 35 million or more unemployed. Yet the left is allowed to go out in mass rallies. You want to go to church? You can't do it. But the left can go around tearing down statues while the police just watch. There's more and more videos of these statues being destroyed. And we are watching now gun battles. I tell you what, man. Maybe it doesn't need to be a full-scale bloodbath for it to be a civil war. But I'll tell you what, man. I feel like this is it. And maybe it just becomes this low-grade thing. But we've got factions. We've got shootings now. A dude draws his AR-15. He's not the first guy. He's not the first guy to do this. There was another video where a guy in front of his house pulls out an AR. I believe. I'm not a rifle guy, so I don't know exactly what kind of rifle it was. And then the protesters start screaming, and then apparently he got arrested for brandishing the weapon. Let's just keep reading. They say, other social media posts claim the incident was a shootout, but police have not confirmed whether more than one weapon was fired. So maybe he did return fire. And that's about it. So listen, this is in Atlanta. We've got East Coast. We got West Coast. Well, Atlanta is Southeast. But we've got those residents in South Philly showing up with bats and weapons. I believe they were armed with guns, some of them at least. And they roughed up one of these far-left activist journalist guys from Unicorn Riot. Now, I can understand, this guy, at this point, there's no journalists. Let's be honest. There are no journalists, maybe one or two. The guys from Unicorn Riot should be allowed to commit acts of journalism. I'll put it that way. If you see a person out, it doesn't matter what they're wearing. If they're just going around filming and minding their own business, you let them do it. Antifa won't. I don't want to see local residents do the same thing, but I'll tell you what. There's a big difference between a political, ideological faction that travels the country causing trouble and a bunch of people saying, get out of my neighborhood. I can respect people saying, get out of my neighborhood, but you still can't stop someone from filming. There's look, I got to sympathize with people who live there because you don't want cameras coming up in your area, but you can't do that. So listen, we got Philly, we got Atlanta, we got Portland, we got Seattle. This has not stopped. You know that, right? Like, the media isn't covering the protests that much anymore, but they're still happening. They never stopped. They're still, I think only a few days ago, last week, maybe like a week ago, 60,000 or so people like marching in Seattle, some ridiculously huge number. And then we see in these other cities, Atlanta, for instance, a woman, she was protesting. In D.C., they're protesting. And what's happening? They are going around destroying public property. It has not stopped. Statues are being torn down. They tore down Francis Scott Key. They got Jefferson. They got Washington. Now they got the guy who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. They're even going after Ulysses S. Grant. They are destroying everything. It has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. These are people hijacking the movement, and it works. Brilliant. Let me read a little bit of this story and tell you about the police calling off. Because I'll tell you what, man, the left wants this. They want the police gone because when the police are gone, no one will stop them. But you know what? The cops aren't stopping them anyway. So why should I care about these local cops? I want to make sure I differentiate between these city cops who sit on their hands and do nothing as our history is destroyed. And I'm not talking about the Confederates. I'm talking about Francis Scott Key, Ulysses S. Grant, and I'm talking about the founding fathers. And mind you, Grant was the guy who defeated the Confederates. They're destroying all of that, and the cops do nothing. Now the cops are calling off. Yeah, you know what? Maybe it's time for them all to quit. A majority of Atlanta police officers scheduled to work in 2 of the city's 6 police zones did not report for work on Friday. Law enforcement sources tell CNN. This comes as the city is still reeling from the death of Rayshard Brooks. Rolfe was terminated. We get it. Okay, so I guess they say this is the 3rd straight day some officers have stayed out as a result of the low staffing. The department is now putting officers normally assigned to major crime units on the street in uniform to answer 911 calls. Atlanta Interim Police Chief Rodney Bryant told officers in an email obtained by CNN that he understands their anger and frustration. I'm not here to try to convince you that your anger and fear are not real. What I am here to tell you is that we, all of us who wear a badge, are in this together and we support you. No, they don't. And don't believe it for 2 seconds. They're putting this guy, he's facing the death penalty or life in prison. And people are lying. The DA is lying. They don't have your back. It's breaking down. If the DA keeps doing this, man, I don't know what you expect from these cops, but this is just too much. Things are getting crazy out there. The Chaz, a shooting. Well, surprise, surprise. And you know what, man? I believe it's the East Precinct in Seattle. I was going to say the third, the East Precinct. That's what they're occupying. Okay, they're surrounding it. And now a shooting has taken place right near where a police station was. Listen, police can't stop crimes for the most part. For the most part, they cannot. I have had cops save me from a mugging one time. It was fortuitous. A guy was trying to mug me. I didn't have any money anyway. I don't care, whatever. But the cops ran up and grabbed him and stopped him. It was kind of crazy. But for the most part, when you have a crime, the cops don't stop it. But the cops do provide a deterrent effect because they patrol. And very often, they do stop some crime. And they respond to 911 calls. If the cops aren't responding anymore, and if they say they won't go to places like the Chaz, and you're going to go to a protest where you know the cops aren't around, you are going to see things start breaking down. Maybe it all dries up. Maybe this is all about the election. I don't know, man. I see a lot of people posting tweets saying, oh, it's the election is this year, and they're desperate to make you go nuts and try and vote and react. Maybe that's why I said this shooting in Atlanta hit a protester, but it is Atlanta, man. You know what I mean? Like, maybe shootings happen. Maybe it has nothing to do with the protests. And what happened in Seattle and the Chaz, yes, sometimes shootings happen. Maybe we don't want to overreact on these things. But the cops are calling out statues are being destroyed. Who, you know, how is that about an election? Are these leftists going out to support Trump to scare Americans by destroying the founding fathers, the statues of them? The statues of Union generals who defeated the Confederates? Now, that's insane. But yeah, man, that's exactly what's happening. Stick around. The next segment will be coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.